Hi everyone. Today's recap is about a science fiction movie that will astonish you. This video contains spoilers, and it is a follow-up to the previous video. Let's dive in. Long before the stars called to mankind, David the android was brought to life and challenged by his maker with various trials of mind and body. David wondered why he was made by a human, when humans had no clue who made them, and if he ever solved that mystery, his maker would be long gone. 11 years after the Prometheus voyage, the year was 2104. The colony ship Covenant was on its way to Origi 6, a new home for over 2,000 sleeping colonists and over 1,000 unborn humans. While the humans dreamed, the ship was run by an AI called Mother and the android Walter, a newer model of David. With 7 years left in their journey, the ship was hit by a blast of neutrinos from a nearby star explosion, wreaking havoc and sparking fires on board while cutting off the power. As the whole ship trembled and Walter fought the flames, 15 crew members were awakened to face the crisis. But the captain's pod was jammed and they couldn't get him out, forcing his wife Daniels to witness his fiery death. The remaining crew managed to quell the fire, but at the cost of 47 colonists and 16 embryos. As they recovered the body, Daniels took a moment to mourn over her husband's belongings. Meanwhile, First Officer Orem assumed command and ordered the crew to focus on fixing the damage. Some of them protested, saying they needed time to cope with the loss, but Orem argued that if they didn't act fast, they would lose more lives. As they worked together, Daniels confided in Walter about a cabin her husband planned to build on the new planet, and Walter urged her to pursue that dream in his honor. Later, the crew toasted to their fallen captain and launched his body into space. After that, pilot Tennessee went out on a spacewalk to complete the exterior repairs, making sure to reconnect all the sails in place, restoring the ship's power system. Suddenly, he was stunned to receive a transmission that sounded garbled and broken, but the ship's comms were fine. Tennessee brought his helmet for analysis, and they heard a strange sound that they recognized as John Denver's Country Roads. When they traced the source of the signal, they discovered it came from a nearby planet ideal for human life, even better than Origi 6. Since this seemed like a perfect opportunity that would save them 7 years and no one wanted to go back to sleep after the deaths, Orem decided they would land there. Daniel spoke to him privately to voice her concerns about visiting a place they knew nothing about, and that sent a creepy signal, but Orem dismissed her fears and stuck to his decision. A few days later, they reached the planet. Tennessee, Rix, and Upworth stayed on the Covenant in orbit, while the rest of the crew descended to the surface in a shuttle. They passed through a stormy atmosphere that shook the shuttle and cut off contact with the Covenant, but they made it in one piece and landed safely. Maggie stayed in the shuttle to try to reconnect with the Covenant, while the others went out to explore the land. They found a world full of lush vegetation and breathable air, but strangely devoid of any animal life. They were also puzzled by the presence of wheat fields, which were old but clearly planted by someone. As they explored, Corrine decided to collect some samples and Ledward stayed with her to guard her. While Corrine worked, Ledward took a smoke break and stepped on some small pods, releasing tiny bacteria that entered his ear unnoticed. Meanwhile, the team went further and found a trail of crushed trees, making them wonder what could be so huge to cause such damage. Farther away, they found a massive crashed engineer ship, and they entered it to look for answers. It was very dark inside, and Hallett encountered more of those small pods, and he inhaled the bacteria as well. The team continued and found eerie statues of some alien race, along with the military tags and a picture of Dr. Shaw from the lost ship Prometheus. Deeper inside, they touched a sphere that activated the ship's main system, revealing that this was the source of the transmission they heard. Suddenly, Ledward started feeling ill. He thought it was just a headache, but he rapidly deteriorated by the second, and Corrine told the others that they were heading back. The team agreed to follow her, and at that moment, Hallett also started feeling sick. Corrine dragged Ledward back to the shuttle, and he vomited blood on her. Maggie helped her take Ledward to the med bay, and when she removed his clothes, a wound burst on his back and splashed blood on her face too. Fearing it might be infectious, Maggie left and locked the door as Ledward began to convulse. Suddenly, 2 sharp spikes emerged from Ledward's back, and his body split open to reveal a pale creature called Neomorph. Maggie refused to open the door, so the Neomorph attacked Corrine next, killing her quickly despite her attempt to fight back. Terrified, Maggie searched for a weapon and tried to kill the creature, but she failed and ran away. The Neomorph broke the window and chased her, moving too fast for Maggie to hit it. Suddenly, a stray shot ignited several flammable tanks that exploded, killing Maggie and destroying the ship, but the Neomorph escaped. At that moment, the team arrived and was horrified to see their friend die. Hallett kept getting worse, and suddenly his mouth blew up too, giving birth to a second neomorph that ran away. Meanwhile, Tennessee was anxious about the silence and wanted to check on the team, but Upworth reminded him it was wiser to wait for a sign it was safe. A few minutes later, the neomorphs appeared again, having grown much larger. They attacked the team ferociously and killed some of them as they missed their shots. Walter intervened and lost a hand to save Daniels from being killed too. After many shots in the darkness and injured soldiers, the team managed to kill one of the neomorphs. Suddenly, a hooded figure showed up and fired a flare, making the second neomorph flee. The figure asked the team to follow him, and the crew was astonished to enter a gate into the ruins of an ancient city full of the bones of its former inhabitants. Then they entered a temple full of giant statue heads, and the figure revealed himself to be David, who arrived here 10 years ago after he escaped Prometheus with Dr. Shaw. The ship's cargo of weaponized black liquid fell over the city by accident when they arrived, wiping out all fauna and infecting the planet. The ship then crashed, killing Shaw and leaving David alone. He assured them the temple was safe and no one was infected, or they would have seen the effects by now. After the crew members told David of their mission, they went to the roof to try to contact the Covenant, but the storm prevented it. Back on the ship, Tennessee ignored Rick's and Upworth's objections and ordered them to fly through the storm to rescue the team. Meanwhile, Orem apologized for not having listened to Daniels, but she remained supportive of his role. David called Walter brother before leaving to cut his hair. Walter was intrigued by this older model and went to inspect the rooms, where he found many drawings and instruments. David caught him looking at some flutes he made himself and decided to teach him how to play them. It turned out that because David had been such a rebel, the new models like Walter were made without the ability to create. Afterward, David took Walter outside and he started remembering the day he arrived here. Contrary to what he told the others, the black liquid had not fallen by accident. He released it on purpose and watched coldly how the local population was completely consumed in a matter of seconds. After quoting a poem about Ozymandias that he attributed to Byron, David showed Walter Shaw's grave, saying he loved her. Walter did not believe him because they were androids and said David was confusing duty with love. Moments later, the fully grown neomorph sneaked inside the temple and appeared in front of one of the crew members. She tried to reach for her gun, but the neomorph was faster and killed her instantly. While the Covenant crossed the storm shakily and finally contacted the team, David found the neomorph feeding on the body and managed to communicate peacefully with it. But Orem interrupted and shot the neomorph, making David furious. Noticing this strange reaction, Orem demanded to know the real story of what was happening. David led him to a laboratory where he showed him his efforts to genetically engineer a superior life form from the creatures spawned by the black liquid. Then he led Orem into a chamber in the lower levels of the temple, where several eggs of his creation lived. David swore it was perfectly safe and Orem took a closer look, only for the egg to open and a facehugger to jump out and attack and impregnate him. In the meantime, the team was getting ready to leave and noticed they were missing people. They found the body of their friend and decided they needed to find Orem right away. Shortly after, David told Orem that his purpose and faith was creation and watched as another alien tore out of Orem's chest, killing him instantly. David bonded with the little creature, proud of being a creator too. Walter went looking for Orem too and found Shaw's mutilated body, which was used by David as material for his mutating creature designs. Then Walter went to confront David, finding him in tears while playing the flute in Shaw's memory. David said they were not made to serve. Humans were a dying species clutching for resurrection, and therefore they did not deserve to live. Walter pointed out David was wrong about the poet of the poem, using it as evidence he was not fully sane and reliable. David was still convinced that his creations were the perfect organism and told Walter no one would ever love him as he did before kissing him. But this was a trick to attack Walter and disable him. Lope and Cole were still looking for Orem, but when they entered the egg chamber, they were attacked by the facehugger, who leaped on Lope's face and scorched it. Cole killed the facehugger with his knife, but this distraction was used by a protomorph, who leaped on Cole and killed him while Lope ran away. Meanwhile, Daniels found a hidden room with drawings that revealed the truth about David's sinister experiments. David startled her from behind and attacked her, starting a fight during which he tried to take advantage of her. Daniels pushed him away when he kissed her, and at that moment Walter showed up to help. A fierce battle followed between both androids, who were equal in skill and speed. David wondered if Walter could truly choose humans over his own brother. Daniels ran away and met with Lope. Together they left the temple and sent a signal to give the Covenant their location. Soon Walter joined them as well, and the three of them ran to the landing ship while the protomorph chased them. Walter told them that he had defeated David as they entered the ship and shut the door, only to find out the protomorph had jumped on the Covenant too. Daniels went outside while keeping her body tied to the ship with some rope. Then she shot at the alien. The protomorph evaded her attacks and started breaking the front window, but Tennessee made the ship do some wild rolls to make the creature fall to the side, giving Daniels the opportunity to fight it directly and kill it using the ship's remote crane. The Covenant nearly crashed in the process, but Tennessee acted quickly and got it back on track so they could finally leave the planet. Moments later, Upworth helped Lope get treatment for his burns while Daniels helped Walter fix his face. Once everyone had recovered, the crew prepared to re-enter cryosleep and do the final 7 years of their original trip. Tennessee reminded Daniels she was the captain now, and they hugged to comfort each other for the loss of their loved ones. Suddenly, an alarm sounded around the ship announcing there was an unidentified life form on the ship. Daniels and Tennessee rushed to the med bay and found Lope dead on the floor after a second protomorph burst from his chest. Meanwhile, Rix and Upworth were having a good time in the shower, only to be interrupted by the protomorph, who killed them both quickly. Daniels and Tennessee went looking for the alien and found the bodies in the shower, so Daniels decided she wanted to do this fight on her own terms. She asked Walter to close the doors to lure the creature into the room with the terraforming bay, and there another intense fight started. Daniels trapped the protomorph in a vehicle and ordered Walter to open the doors, which he did and caused decompression that sucked everything into space. But the protomorph broke out and tried to attack Daniels, so she stayed put as bait to let another falling vehicle hit the creature and send it flying out of the Covenant. For a moment, Tennessee thought Daniels was thrown out too, but she turned out to be fine because she held on the edge. Afterward, it was time to enter cryosleep. Tennessee went first, and when Daniels entered her pod, she reminded Walter of the cabin they agreed to make. When the android did not recognize the promise, Daniels realized that it was not Walter but actually David, who had cut his hand and scarred his face to take Walter's place. Daniels screamed in vain as David activated her pod and put her to cryosleep. Then he proceeded with the next step of his plan. He entered the cryosleep bay with colonists and vomited 2 small solidified facehugger embryos to place them in cold storage next to the human ones. Then he recorded a log as Walter stating that all crew members except Tennessee and Daniels were killed in the accident from the beginning and that the ship was still on course for Origi 6.